video lecture number 42, 4.2 To Serve with Love by E.R. Braithwaite. Hello dear students and dear friends. In my some of the earlier video lectures regarding novel, I have already discussed the origin of the novel, the short history of novel, what is novel, elements of novel, and the types of novel. Today I will start with the new chapter 4.2 To Serve with Love by E.R. Braithwaite from section 4 novel. To Serve with Love is an autobiographical novel written by the writer E.R. Braithwaite. Today I will discuss the introduction of the author or the novelist E.R. Braithwaite, introduction of the novel To Serve with Love, and the summary of this novel. So friends, open your textbook of English and see this chapter on page number 178, or you can also read it on the screen in front of you. Now let's start with the introduction of the author E.R. Braithwaite. Eustace Edward Ricardo Braithwaite was born in 1912 and died in 2016. Known as E.R. Braithwaite, was a Guyanese-born British-American novelist, writer, teacher, and diplomat, best known for his stories of social conditions and racial discrimination against black people. Eustace Edward Ricardo Braithwaite was born in 1912 and died in 2016, was known as E.R. Braithwaite, and he was a Guyanese-born British-American novelist, writer, teacher, and diplomat, and he is popularly known for, or he is best known for, his stories of social conditions and racial discrimination against black people. He was the author of one of the famous 1959 autobiographical novels, To Serve with Love, and E.R. Braithwaite was the author of one of the famous 1959 autobiographical novels, To Serve with Love. He also wrote a kind of homecoming about his tour of Africa, A Choice of Straws, a novel set in London, and Reluctant Neighbors, a memoir and treatise about racism. A memoir means a book describing the personal experiences of an author. Memoir means a book describing the personal experiences of an author or an autobiography. And treatise, a treatise means particularly a formal, usually lengthy and systematic discourse on a subject. This is called treatise. E.R. Braithwaite also wrote a kind of homecoming about his tour of Africa, A Choice of Straws, another novel, a novel set in London, and another novel, Reluctant Neighbors, which was based on his own personal experiences, and it is a treatise about the racism. Braithwaite's numerous writings primarily deal with the difficulties of being an educated black man, a black social worker, a black teacher, and simply a human being who found himself in a set of inhuman circumstances. So, Braithwaite's numerous writings basically deal with the difficulties of being an educated black man, problems of being a black social worker, difficulties of a black teacher, and simply a human being who found himself in a set of inhuman circumstances. Now, introduction of the novel. To Serve with Love is an autobiographical novel. To Serve with Love is an autobiographical novel. Autobiographical novel means the novel written by the writer himself and deals with his own life itself. To Serve with Love is an autobiographical novel. The narrator is an engineer, but to make both ends meet, he accepts the job of a teacher in a rough London East End school. The narrator in this autobiographical novel, To Serve with Love, is an engineer, but in order to earn his livelihood, he accepts the job of a teacher in a very rough London East End school. The school is full of troublemaker students who were rejected from other schools for their behavior, and this school where the writer gets the job of a teacher to earn his livelihood is full of troublemaker students who were rejected from other schools just for their ill behaviors. At the beginning, the narrator is ridiculed and bullied by the students. In the beginning of the novel, or in the beginning as his career of a teacher, at the beginning as the career of the teacher, of the writer, the narrator was ridiculed and bullied by his students. But later his calm demeanor and desire to see them succeed gradually earn him their respect. Now, demeanor. Demeanor means the social non-verbal behavior such as body language or facial expressions, etc. In simple words, social non-verbal behaviors like body language and facial expressions. So, At the beginning, the narrator was ridiculed and bullied by his students, but later his calm behavior and desire to see his students succeed gradually earn the respect for him, or his students gave the respect to him. So I repeat, at the beginning the narrator was ridiculed and bullied by his students, but later his calm behaviors and desire to see all his students succeed gradually earned the narrator the respect of the students. Now let's discuss the characters in this novel. First we'll discuss the major characters. There are 6 major characters in this novel. Number 1, Ricky Braithwaite, this is the narrator. Gillian Blanchard, another major character. Mrs. Dale Evans, another major character. Denham. Next, Pamela Dare, Mr. Florian. These are the major characters in this novel. Now the minor characters in the novel, there are many in number. The minor characters in this novel: Bob Belmont, Jacqueline Bender, Clinty, Selma Drew, Hackman, Moira Joseph, Palmer, Euphema Phillips, Jane Purcell, Lawrence Seals, Jess Belmont, Buckley, Josie Daves, Patrick Furman. This is Patrick Furman, Titch Jackson, Monica Page, Barbara Pegg, Potter Sapiano, and Theo Watson. These are the minor characters in the novel. Now see on the next page, that is page number 179. Now we'll discuss summary of the novel. We'll discuss the summary of the novel. To Serve with Love by E.R. Braithwaite. Summary of this novel: To Serve with Love is a work of fiction based on the life of the author E.R. Braithwaite. This novel, To Serve with Love, is a work of fiction based on the life of the writer or the author E.R. Braithwaite. The main character E.R. Braithwaite works as an engineer in an oil refinery. The main character, that is E.R. Braithwaite, works as an engineer in an oil refinery. He served in the Royal British Air Force in the war. He served in the Royal British Air Force in the war, in the World War II, you may say, or in the war. After the war, being a black person, he was unable to find employment. After war, he was unable to find employment just because he was a black person. As a last resort, he applied in a school to become a teacher. And just as a resort here means someone's turn to for safety, or someone's turn for safety. Now, just as the last effort to achieve safety and to have safety, he applied in a school to become a teacher. Surprisingly, he is accepted at the Greenslade School in London's East End and is set to teach the senior classes of the school. And surprisingly, the writer Braithwaite was accepted at the Greenslade School in London's East End and he was set to teach the senior classes of the school. While reading the novel, we have to understand that the time period in which the story takes place is very important. While reading the novel, we have to understand that the time, the duration, the period in which this story takes place, in which the story of the novel takes place, is very important. Braithwaite finds that even though he considers himself British and has served in the Royal Air Force, the English do not consider him to be one of them. And this is very important. Even though Braithwaite, the writer, the novelist, finds that he considers, or as if he considers, or even though he considers himself the British and he has served in the Royal Air Force, but the English people do not consider him to be one of them. Even though the writer Braithwaite considers himself as a British person, as an English person, just because he worked there, he has served in the Royal Air Force, but the English people don't consider him as one of them. This leads Braithwaite to feel bitter about the English and colonialism, as well as about his white student. This leads Braithwaite to feel, Braithwaite considers himself as a British person just because he has served in the Royal Air Force, but the English people do not accept him as an English person. They don't consider him as an English person. This leads Braithwaite to feel bitter about the English people and the colonialism of the British people, as well as about his white students. And this leads Braithwaite to feel bitter about the English people and about the colonialism of the Britishers, as well as about the white students, that is the English students. Braithwaite's teaching position starts out roughly and is embarrassed time and again. Now see here, Braithwaite's teaching position starts out roughly and he is embarrassed again and again, many times. He considers his students disrespectful, ill-mannered and mischievous, while his students consider him to be an arrogant outsider, unfamiliar with the social environment in which they have grown up. See here the contrast. Braithwaite considers his students disrespectful, ill-mannered and mischievous, while his students consider him to be arrogant outsider, unfamiliar with the social environment in which the students have grown up. The students harass him from day one, slamming their desks during his lecture, using a foul language and bullying him to a great extent. The students in the class of Braithwaite harassed him, troubled him from day one by slamming their desk during his lecture, using foul language for him, and bullying him to a great extent. Even the girl students do not spare a moment to harass Braithwaite. Even girl students have also harassed Braithwaite. In a reaction to that, Braithwaite verbally scolds the girls for acting in an unladylike manner and being unruly in the class. But as a reaction to this, Braithwaite verbally scolds these girl students for acting an unladylike manner. When he understands that his outburst has not gained him any respect and cooperation from the students, he changes his teaching and handling tactics, and he decides to interact with them as though they are adults and respectable persons. Now see, when Braithwaite understands that his outburst has not gained him any respect and cooperation from his students, then Braithwaite changes his teaching and handling tactics, and he decides to interact with the students as though they are adults and respectable persons. He requires every girl to be referred to as Miss, and that his students call him Sir. And for this he required to call every girl and refer her as Miss, and to his student, and that his students call him Sir. At first the students find this level of deference ridiculous and unnecessary. However, they come around only after only a few weeks, completely changing both their hygiene and their attitudes towards one another. Now, deference means respect and politeness, or great respect. Deference, it is not difference, it is deference. Here deference means great respect or respect and politeness. He requires every girl to be referred as Miss, and that his students call him Sir. At first, the students find this level of deference, great respect to them ridiculous and unnecessary. However, they come around after only a few weeks, completely change in their hygiene and their attitude towards one another. This marks the success of Braithwaite in handling the students in a very amicable way. Amicable means showing friendliness or goodwill. Amicable means showing friendliness or goodwill. And this marks the success of Braithwaite in handling the students in a very loving and friendly way. To increase the class cultural exposure, he takes them on field trips and excursions to museums and theaters. To everyone's surprise, many of the students have never been. And to increase his class the cultural exposure, in order to give the cultural experiences and to give the cultural exposure to his class, the writer or the teacher here, Mr. Braithwaite, takes them on field trips. Mr. Braithwaite, the teacher, takes his students on field trips and excursions to the museums and theaters. And to everyone's surprise, many of the students have never been to these places. A white female teacher, Gillian Blanchard, accompanies the class on the excursions. This marks the beginning of a friendship between Blanchard and Braithwaite. There was a white female teacher named Gillian Blanchard. She accompanied the class on these excursions with Mr. Braithwaite, and this was the beginning of a friendship between the beginning of the friendship between Braithwaite and Blanchard. Similarly, Braithwaite's relationship with his students is tested many a times, and similarly Braithwaite's relationship with his students was tested many a times. Although his students frequently disappoint and hurt him, he learns to forgive them. The students constantly surprise him with their maturity, empathy, and knowledge. Although Braithwaite's students frequently disappoint and hurt him, he learned to forgive his students. Even though his students frequently disappoint and hurt him, Mr. Braithwaite learned to forgive his students, and the students constantly surprise him with their maturity, empathy, and knowledge. Another facet of the story which greatly affects its narrative lies in the heavy history of colonialism. Facet means side. Another side of the story which greatly affects its narrative lies in the heavy history of colonialism. Its dark consequences, mental and physical trauma that increases Braithwaite's hatred and wrath for British. Trauma means here a severe shock, and wrath means anger. So another side of the story which greatly affects its narrative lies in the heavy history of colonialism, its dark consequences, mental and physical trauma that increases Braithwaite's hatred and anger for British people. He constantly feels the prejudicial effects of colonialism while living in England after World War II, and these negative experiences frequently shape his thoughts and actions. Mr. Braithwaite constantly feels the prejudicial effects of colonialism while living in England and after World War II, and these negative experiences frequently shape his thoughts and actions. Braithwaite is surprised and shocked by the conditions in which these students live, and also the physical trauma of the war that can be seen throughout his teaching environment. And Braithwaite was surprised and shocked by the conditions in which his students live, in which his white students live, and also the physical trauma of the war that can be seen throughout his teaching environment. So friends, we should stop here. In my next video lecture, I will discuss the theme of the novel and the extract that is given in your textbook. So we should stop here. Have a nice day, but I suggest you to read this chapter twice, thrice, line by line. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.